Greetings, my fellow adventurers. I am coming to you from, I know it's where like the Hosford Abernathy neighborhood meets another neighborhood. I remember wiping out on a Lime scooter right at this intersection and like almost busting my ankle. But the primary reason I'm here is this intersection up ahead is Southeast 26th and Powell. And this right here is Cleveland High School. Hell yeah, brother. So the reason I'm here, particularly in the vicinity of Grover Cleveland High School today, is for a little small story. One of those ones that was kind of there and then it kind of faded away, like a lot of stories I cover. So tragically, as we all know at this point, violence in schools of varying natures is so common that nowadays a lot of times when there is violence at a school, we don't even really hear about it anymore. And I remember being a kid, being in like 5th grade when the Thurston shooting happened, being in 6th grade when Columbine happened, and each of those stories individually was a big deal because it just was so uncommon. So you think even, school shootings date back actually much further than we want to realize. There's like databases that actually show like pretty much every school shooting on record. And in a lot of instances, the first school shooting has been attributed to Brenda Spencer, who was a girl, I think 1979, opened fire on an elementary school that was across the street from where she lived, but school shootings went back long before that. But again, they were extremely rare, seldom talked about because there weren't really enough to get people talking about them. But interestingly enough, there was a lot of tomfoolery going on in relation to kids in school during the 1950s. I found multiple articles where kids called in like bomb threats and had to have their schools evacuated. There were, other instances where kids would make threats that had no validation to them, claiming, "Oh, I could do this," or "I'm gonna do this," but then didn't have anything to back it up. I've strangely found a lot of articles from the 1950s. I don't know, 1950s, I guess it's kind of a renegade period. You got the greasers becoming more of a thing. The kids in high school are starting to wear leather and smoke cigarettes, and it's post World War II where America's like finally become like the primary world power, up there with like the Soviet Union. And I don't know, maybe there was just a lot of, obviously some kids weren't getting taught the way they should have, and maybe there was just a kind of elitist attitude in the country at that time. And that bred some violence in particularly school kids. But in particular, I'm here at Cleveland High School for one particular story. And I can tell you right now, I don't know what it's like now, but when I was in school, I remember Cleveland here didn't exactly have a great reputation. I still remember my senior year of high school, and we went running at Oaks Bottom Wildlife Reserve, which is a couple miles off that way. And when we got there to run, when we finished, there was like a bunch of news crews there. And it turned out a kid that went to school here had like abducted a woman and taken her into the recesses of the wildlife reserve there and did things to her. And so unfortunately, and I know pretty much everybody I've ever spoken to who's gone to Cleveland High School doesn't have fantastic perspective of the place. Or the kids that went there, they don't exactly have glowing memories of going to school here. Not trying to completely knock it. It's not an utterly horrible neighborhood, but it's you know, it has its issues. But again, that's contemporary. I'm not even talking about the old days. So yeah, let's go back specifically to 1953. So sometime in the middle of the night, probably, it said the evening, but I'm guessing probably fairly late at night when nobody's really going to be awake. On November 3rd, 1953, a homemade bomb that in particular had been made out of a piece of water pipe and then used potassium chloride and sugar. That was what the bomb was made of, and it was chucked through one of the windows here at the school. So you can see this is Powell Boulevard, and even back in the 50s, this was a pretty well-traveled road. Another thing that makes me think they probably did it in the middle of the night, because they could have been seen, and obviously a bomb blowing up would have attracted some attention. But yeah, they walked up to, I don't know which one, but one of these windows. I'm guessing probably a lower one, like one of these down here. Maybe there were, I guess there's windows in here, so maybe it was one of those. Could have been on the front end of the school as well. But yeah, they chucked this homemade bomb through one of the windows into a classroom, and it blew like 2 good-sized holes in the ceiling, and it blew several holes in the walls of the room. Like, it obviously blew up and just sent shrapnel shards all over the place, and it just blew all these holes in the room. Caused a pretty significant amount of damage, and I mean, God forbid they did this during school hours. Like, kids would have died, guaranteed. This probably would have killed and injured so many people. Also, I think this is the next high school in line to get refurbished. They've been refurbishing a lot of these old high schools, and I think that's why it looks so beat to shit right now. Yeah, I mean, this high school looks almost like borderline abandoned. I would not like to go to a high school that's right along a really busy street. I was lucky my high school was down like a cul-de-sac. But yeah, they just blew this room up inside the school, and people could hear it from, you know, I mean, it's a bomb. You could hear it from many, many, many blocks away. And ultimately, there was as many as 8 different kids spoken to. So it wasn't just one renegade kid. There was a whole bunch of kids that got kind of behind this. And it was ultimately deemed that an 18-year-old, I presume student here, they didn't say as much, but I presume he was a student here. I don't know, he could have been a student from a rival school, and that could have been the motivating factor. They wanted, I remember Milwaukee High School was my high school's rival school, and they actually put concrete into the sand pit that we long jumped into, which fortunately we found, because we literally could have blown up, we could have like broke our ankles jumping into that. Not cool. But ultimately, an 18-year-old by the name of Donald Quimby was brought in, and he admitted to building the bomb himself. He actually said it was one of 3 bombs he had built in the basement of his home, which if he was a student here, it would have been, you know, somewhere around here if it was a rival school. I know we're like 30 some blocks from Franklin High School. Maybe he was a Franklin kid looking to mess with a nearby high school. There's just a big paint splatter up there in the window. But this isn't necessarily the end of things, because this was not the only bombing that actually happened during this short period of time, specifically involving the use of a homemade bomb. So Reed College, which is just a ways that direction, not too horribly far. maybe like a mile or so down that way. So kind of generally in the neighborhood of Cleveland High School here. There was another homemade bomb. Someone had tossed a homemade bomb onto the rooftop of a dormitory building at Reed College. And this was very close to the time that the bomb was thrown through the window here. So there was a thought that the two events were related. When Donald Quimby was spoken to, he quickly admitted to being the one that threw the bomb through a window at this school, but he made no mention of the Reed College one. So I don't know. Maybe he felt he'd get in more trouble for that. Maybe he wasn't involved in that one. The timing is pretty suspicious though, and the fact that it wasn't really that far away. And while as many as 8 kids were spoken to, I only saw the names Thomas Babler, 19, and Philip Benedict, 19, also being apprehended in relation to this. And Quimby was charged with, I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. He was charged with destruction of property. And Babler and Benedict were charged with willful and wanton destruction of property. I mean, I'm playing like, yeah, they may have not built the bomb and they may have not even thrown the bomb in the building, but they were willing participants in this. And that was the last thing I really read, was that they were apprehended and then released on their own recognizance. And it seems like nobody really talked about the story anymore after that. And I'm wondering if these kids even really got in any trouble for this, or maybe they just were told like, okay kids, like you did something wrong, you need to make amends for it. And maybe they gave them some community service project, or maybe they said like, you need to mow everyone's lawn in town for the next month. I really don't know, because the case kind of disappeared after that. And it's the 50s, and I don't know, reading about this particular case, I get a major kind of boys will be boys kind of vibe from it. Like, oh, okay, this was wrong, but it's just some teenagers, and they're rambunctious, and they're trying to get their energy out in various ways, and maybe we're not paying enough attention to our children, and that's why they're lashing out in this way. And I mean, yeah, there is a certain reality to that concept, but it just seems kind of like this wasn't really taken that seriously. And again, that may be a project of its time. The fact that something like this was so incredibly rare, like school shootings were rare enough. Bombing a school, and yeah, it was a little homemade bomb, but what do you expect from some high schoolers? It was still some teenage kids who thought it would be fun to bomb their high school. So yeah, I get very strong vibes that this was not really taken perhaps as seriously as it should have been. And maybe I'm taking it too seriously because I live in the present day where things are so much worse in terms of schools, violence, and school safety and all that. And just as I start talking, it's all right, the police are coming. Maybe they're coming to talk to me. I've seen about like 3 cars slow down, and I'm wondering if they're looking at me. They're wondering like, why is this guy walking around filming this high school? It's all for history, people, don't worry. It's all historical. And besides, it's a Sunday in August. There's nobody here. And strangely enough, while, the bombing here took place, there was all these other random stories I found from the 50s of kids getting into mischief in relation to their schools, and none of them really getting into much trouble. But there was also, just a couple days after Quimby and crew threw their bomb through the window here, it was just 5 days later, on the 8th, that somebody, it was a more crudely made bomb, and it was really far away from here, so I very highly doubt they're connected. These same boys are connected to that one, but it very much, it's a few days down the road. The bombing at Cleveland High School had gotten some press coverage, and I'm wondering if maybe somebody tried doing a copycat thing, and they had a much more kind of thrown together bomb. I think it was mainly made out of like a glass, it's like a glass tube, and it was way up in North Portland. Someone propped this bomb on a sign at North Vancouver and Beach Street, and blew it up. And it obviously, you know, it wasn't a great quality bomb, and it didn't really do a lot of damage. I read that it only seared the top of the sign that it was put on, but it certainly got attention. And you know, one little bombing event happens and it's like, okay, isolated incident. It's just an isolated incident. And then another one happens a few days later and you're like, okay, what the hell is going on here? So yes, there was some tomfoolery going on in this city back in the 50s. And while this is an easy to dismiss story, some kids threw a little thing together and threw it through a window and it went boom and it made a couple of holes, big deal. But again, what if these kids, Quimby in particular, the kid that made the bomb, what if these people had been more vindictive, and what if they had made the decision to toss it into a room during a class period, or God forbid, throw it into the gymnasium during a major event? He probably didn't even know how strong the thing would be when he put it together. I don't know, he built other bombs, maybe he knew. But it's still, I think one of the reasons I wanted to cover it was because, again, it's just such a rare story at a time where there wasn't really, you know, the decades preceding it and even the decades after, there wasn't really a lot of violence of this level. But for a time, there was this kind of stuff going on. So that is the story of, I wonder if the kids going to Cleveland now realize that some kid tried to blow up one of their classrooms 70 years ago. Probably not. It seems like a fairly obscure story, but that is it. That is the story of the bombing of Cleveland High School back in 1953. So, it's getting a little hot. I need shade. This is what I need. I'd like to thank you all so much for stopping by, taking in today's video. Again, I'm trying to get back to doing this a little bit more often again. It's good for my health, it's good for my soul, and I've really missed just kind of going out and bringing you stories from about town where they happened. So all that said, thank you again for stopping by. Remember to like, share, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. I also have a Patreon if you want to help me out there. All those little things that help me out. And till next time, it's been Steve the Amateur Historian.